The year is 1939. World War II had just begun. Foods were becoming scarce as they were needed to feed the soldiers overseas. The United States and German governments made compromises to deal with the food shortage during the conflict of World War II. Food rationing in the United States officially began in 1942. Government agencies such as the United States Food Administration began dealing with the rations right away. First created in April of 1917, during World War I, the United States Food Administration are in charge of food reserves in the U.S. The U.S. Food Administration began printing advertisements encouraging citizens to save food. The government issued food rationing stamps for every citizen in the United States. Food rationing is the act of saving or limiting the intake and use of a product. In the case of World War II, the act of limiting the use of food. Every member in a family receives a stamp book. Stamps are used along with U.S. currency to purchase food from their local grocer. Foods that were rationed include meat, dairy products, processed foods, frozen foods, sugar, and coffee. Other food items were divided into two different categories. There was a blue category and a red category. Blue ration points were used for items such as bottled, canned, or dried foods. Red points were used for items such as dairy, meat, and fish. Food items such as sugar and coffee had their own stamps. When citizens would get ration stamps, they would get 96 blue stamps and 96 red stamps. Ration stamps would also say the time period when citizens could spend them. For instance, if their ration stamps were marked with an A, B, or C, they were valid in March. People were not allowed to take ration stamps out of the book before they went to buy groceries because they wouldn't be valid. Citizens have to take their stamps out in front of the grocer or delivery man. People had to make sure that they used their stamps worth high values first, because otherwise, at the end of the month, they might need something worth 2 points, but they only have 8. Those 6 other points are worthless. Stamps do not equal 1 point. They all have different values. Values of a product work like this. The more scarce a food is, the more points it's worth. Stamps from the first period do not work in the second. However, if somebody ran out of stamps in the first, they can use stamps from the second to pay. Local government agencies, like the Connecticut War Council, said that people should teach babies not to throw food on the ground because then food would not be wasted by being thrown on the ground. Another rule of the ration system is that citizens may not borrow stamps from their neighbor. It's okay if somebody borrows a can of peas from a neighbor, but they cannot borrow stamps. Stamps were given to a specific person versus a can of peas. The peas are not assigned to a specific person. If a product costs a lot of money, that does not mean it is going to cost a lot of ration points. For instance, a can of peas may cost 5 ration stamps, and a T-bone steak costs 3 ration stamps. T-bone steak may cost more than the can of peas in normal money. However, ration stamp costs do not change regardless of the price of the product. The system might sound organized, but it wasn't. Grocers would run out of government stamp sheets and had to use bushel baskets to hold ration stamps from customers. Grocers often lost the stamps due to the amount of stamps they had in their possession. However, the United States system was still better than Germany. German citizens had to ration their food as well. Food rationing in Germany began on August 27, 1939. In Germany, there were no stamps for people to get groceries, just daily allowances for food. Allowances were also based on people's social class in Germany. Normal consumers received 2,400 calorie diets per day. Heavy workers received 3,600 calories per day, and very heavy workers received 4,200 calories. Other calorie counts for children, adolescents, and self-suppliers like farmers were set up. Along with calorie counts, there were allowances for specific foods. Fats, 12 ounces, sugar, 9 ounces, jam, 3.5 ounces, meat, 20 ounces, bread, 8.5 ounces. Due to rationing, restaurants were not allowed to serve meat on Tuesdays and Fridays. Fanta soda is one of the most recognizable sodas in the world, but during World War II, Nazi soldiers in Germany could not get Coca-Cola syrup due to U.S. trade embargoes, or in other words, trade restrictions. In 1941, Max Kite, the head of Coca-Cola Deutschland, gave his last batch of Coke to the Nazis. He did this because Mr. Kite was loyal to his home of Germany and thought the soldiers should have the last batch. To save Coca-Cola Deutschland from going out of business, Mr. Kite created a soda from items only available in Germany. He created a soda from whey, a cheese byproduct, saccharin, an artificial sweetener, and oranges. Max Kite announced the product to his employees and asked them to fantasize for the name. An employee named Joe Nip then immediately shouted out, "Fanta!" Fanta sales were amazing in Germany, and ultimately saved Coca-Cola Deutschland from going out of business. In fact, some soups even contained Fanta in them. Coca-Cola did not want to say that Fanta was formulated by them, because it would be corporate suicide to say the US and the Nazis were drinking the same soda. Nowadays, Fanta soda is a global brand. The original orange flavor is the core flavor, representing 70% of sales. There are over 70 different flavors under the Fanta name, selling in many different countries. One of the biggest purchasers of Fanta is the country of Brazil. Along with governments making food compromises, other types of food grew to popularity during this time. Kraft macaroni and cheese was first created in 1936. 3 years before the war. The meal promised to feed a family of 4 in 9 minutes. Kraft macaroni and cheese grew very popular during World War II. One ration stamp could get somebody 2 boxes for just 19 cents. Spam is another food that grew in popularity during the war, especially in Hawaii. During the war, the Hormel Corporation gave 15 million cases to GIs in Hawaii. Spam was even nicknamed Special Army Meat because of how much the soldiers ate it. Spam was perfect because it had a long shelf life and did not need to be refrigerated. Today, Spam is a staple in Hawaii. People can even order it at McDonald's or Burger King, only in Hawaii. Due to World War II, Spam has left a mark on Hawaii as a magnificent food to the people there. Both the United States and German governments made compromises to deal with the food shortage during the conflict of World War II. Each time you eat something, you often take for granted where the food came from. It's often interesting to see that some of your favorite foods came from a conflict such as World War II and were used when compromises had to be made.